Hola clase. Quería tener un poco tiempo de repasar los irregulares del imperfecto. Just want to have a little time to talk about the imperfect irregulars. You probably read about them in the page ahead you read, but I want to spend just a little bit of time here talking about them individually so that we can kind of peg them into our memories forever. Because guess what? There's only three. That's it. There are only three. That's the best part about the imperfect tense. It's really hard to think about using the imperfect tense in the past to set the scene. That's a harder concept to understand because it doesn't really exist in English. But once we have the concept, the actual conjugation is very, very simple, right? We have our abas and we have our ias. Aba for AR verbs and ias for ER-IR verbs. And then there's these three irregulars. Ser, ir, and ver. That's it. If you memorize these three, and they are just the three you kind of have to just memorize, but once you memorize those three, you're trying to use any other verb in the imperfect tense, it's going to be aba or ia. So you basically can already have had the imperfect tense memorized by the end of this video. So if we look at ser, it's like we took the S off and then conjugated with some pretty normal endings. Of course, like all imperfect conjugations, the yo form and the he/she form are the same. So you might want to use a pronoun like we do in English. So rather than just saying yo era, you'd say yo era or él or ella era, rather than just say era doctor, you'd say yo era doctor. Era, eras, era, éramos, eran. Another great thing about the imperfect tense, but basically Spanish conjugation in general, no matter what tense we're conjugating in, you pretty much can tell who it is we're talking about. Eras still ends in an S, éramos still ends in a mos, eran still ends in an N, telling us who it is that's doing it. Another thing worthy of note is that ser is not a condition, right? We know this pretty well in the present tense. Ser is an identity and estar is a condition. For some reason, we fall back a little bit when we're learning into the past tense. Sometimes we start using era as a condition and estaba as an identity, which we should not do. But for some reason, when we're learning Spanish, when we've learned ser and estar really well, when we get into the past, sometimes we make those mistakes again. So let's not do that. And remember that you'd say something like, with your identity, if I was a student, yo era estudiante. But you say, I was at school, yo estaba en la escuela. Right? Being at school is a condition. So just remember not to confuse those two. This is ser. Put it to memory because you will need to use it in the future a lot. Well, in the past, I guess you could say. But in our actual future, you are going to be using era. It would be a great word to slip into some of your interviews to show that you can use the past tense and imperfect. The verb ir, to go, right? We know this. Iba would be I was going, or I went continually or habitually, right? So you can say something like, iba a lecciones de piano. I went to piano lessons como niño, like as a kid, I went to piano lessons. I'm not talking about a specific moving from my house to the piano lessons on a specific point in time. I'm talking about something that I continually did over and over and over again. It basically is an AR ending with an IR verb, which is definitely irregular, right? Iba, ibas, iba, íbamos. Notice that accent on the we form, and iban. Again, es, amos, an, just like all the other imperfect verbs. Another really common use of iba is when people are giving excuses or starting a story. So they'd be like, iba a la tienda, I was going to the store when, so that's it's starting the story. Or they would say, as an excuse, like, oh, I was going to the store, but then I got attacked by ninjas. Iba a la tienda, pero me atacaron algunas ninjas, right? So it's a great way to start excuses. The last verb, ver, the reason that it is irregular, because look, it just adds an ia. So wait, isn't adding an ia a normal thing in the imperfect? It is, but normally we would take off the entire er. So if you look at it, you notice that they keep the e, which is strange for conjugating verbs. Normally you would take off the ar, the I, or the er. In this one, we just take off the r, and we keep the e. And I think that's to avoid confusion with other words like via, which means path or way. So they keep the E to avoid confusion with other words. So we have veía, veías, veía, veíamos, and veían. Veían tele, like they were watching television. Cuando, when. Veían tele cuando. So anywho, those are the three irregulars in the imperfect tense. Those of you who've had it before, this should be pretty familiar to you. This is just a reminder that they are indeed the only three, and that if it's any other verb, just use the normal aba or ia. And then these three you just have to memorize. Not as easy. Preterite is definitely not as easy as this. Preterite has lots of irregulars that we'll be going over for the rest of the year. So thanks for watching y hasta luego, clase. Ciao.